What is up, everybody, and welcome back to one more episode of the World's Pink Ward. I know. I said I was going to be a little late a week ago. You ever just get busy? Because that happens. Needless to say, our extra live stream was a resounding success. I know we raised over $2,000 for that one, so if you did tune into that one, shout out to you. Thank you very much for that. And in the midst of all of that chaos, we also had the chaos that was the semifinals of Worlds 2025. And boy, howdy. One of those series was great. That's the series we're going to start with here today to cover specifically that one. So I understand if you don't watch the next episode because understanding what happened, look, let's just say I get it. This one, at least, though, we do have a rematch of the LCK finals in GenG and KT Rolster. We've been riding this roller coaster of KT Rolster, so you want to be a KT fan. And needless to say, they've impressed, but a lot of people had doubts about how good they actually were given who they had played up to this point. Realistically, not as tough of competition to get here. Oh, they're 8-0, whatever. Sure, but who have they really played? They're going to play GenG, then they're going to get wiped off the map. GenG has an extensive experience playing against KT Rolster in 2025. You take a look at the graphic, overall 15-4 in games, 6-1 in series. Now, needless to say, towards the end of 2025, KT did close the gap a little bit. Based off of the series, we saw that they won in round 2 of the playoffs, and then after sending GenG to the lower bracket, they would come back and beat them in the next best-of series, which is also how KT ended up getting into Worlds. So we would think that probably GenG has their number. We could see the same results. We expect the same results. Everybody that predicted anything expected the same results, that GenG would walk away with this one pretty handedly. 3-1, 3-0 potentially, and we're going to get Chovy in the finals because it's the Church of Chovy time, right? Maybe. We'll hold on to our hats for this one. Let's get into game number 1, where we started off with the KT draft, giving them realistically more win conditions overall. They had a lot more that they could play off of. If one thing doesn't necessarily get the box checked, then there's another backup plan that they'll be able to play off of in order to get them to a better end-game scenario. Early on, Chovy ends up failing his flash to give BDD the early advantage in what should be a tough lane matchup. They made the joke he's full build. Because of that early first blood kill, he gets early gold. That helps out BDD's lane phase a lot. In the early stages of the game, there was a significant amount of back and forth play across the map, with KT getting their dragons stacked, GenG picking up Rift Herald, but the most important thing out of mostly what happened in these early stages is that there wasn't a real good team fight opportunity that KT had. BDD was forced to utilize his ultimate as an escape more often than he was as an engage or as an offensive tool, thus kind of limiting the expectations that we had of KT's ability with the team that they had. Finally, around the Otacon timeline, the fights started to become more frequent, and KT's advantage would start to develop, getting closer and closer to their sole point. The setup around that would get KT wiped off of the map, giving GenG the neutral objective of picking up a Baron and Dragon, kind of slowing down the game state for KT just a little bit. Now, waiting for their respawn timers, GenG, having advantage of this one, would just full send after getting a catch in the mid lane, all the way underneath Inhibitor Tower, and I don't know why. I mean, you have the pick already. You already have yourself in this position to have advantage, to then continue on to build your advantage, but then you decide to full send under an Inhibitor Tower against a Caitlyn who can just put traps down and then headshot you and then win the fight. Guess what happened? Exactly that. They get wiped for an unnecessary dive. They give KT the Dragon's Soul, and from there, KT would just continue to kind of build up with whatever tempo and pressure that they would have. They would start to set up for a Baron, but seemingly miscommunications and a mixed communication in general would give a non-committal sort of experience for KT around Baron, because some would be staying on it, some would be peeling off to try to start and engage in a fight. That mixed messaging would end up in KT just getting steamrolled off of that one, letting GenG kind of roll in, take the objective, and start their Baron siege. Rolled to the top lane, 40 minutes into the game. Seemingly like a very normal siege of this game, all of a sudden, KT just hits a countdown timer, 3, 2, 1, let's go. And, I mean, you got to admire the cojones that they have to do that, because an Baron-empowered GenG to just engage in a fight like that, if you lose that fight, that's game over. You lost that one outright. But somehow, well, not somehow, we know how, a high percentage ultimate from BDD, regardless of who he hits, who he doesn't hit, he's kind of closing off the gap of this one, forces the timeline out for Dom to get some traps down, to force out a Zhonya's, to get these headshots, get the damage off from the back line. And they just really push GenG back, taking out a lot of their advantage that they had built up to that point. From there, tempo swings back to KT Rolster. That waterfalls to their Elder Drake, to a Baron for KT, and then they just got to wait for the right fight in the GenG base to end on pushing in to win in 46 minutes. Back and forth game, you think, okay, GenG's got their number. They put themselves in a position now. They get preference of side select. This is where GenG comes back and ends the Cinderella story, right? Clock's at midnight. Maybe. Game number 2, we'll at least give the draft phase to GenG. They did seem to have a better team composition and draft overall. Very early on, BDD decides to repay the favor from game number 1. Fails the flash. Chovy ends up getting first blood out of that one, and that would help start to accelerate Chovy's lead in this one. The setups that GenG had around the neutral objectives in this game were stellar, to say the least. They were always there to get priority, always there on time. KT was reactively going from A to B to C, never really in a solid position. That proactiveness from GenG would put them in position for a Rift Herald, and what they thought looked like a good engage from Peter just gets completely turned around because Ruler's DPS just all of a sudden is off the charts. So they had scaled up to that point well enough that it really gave GenG the advantage they were looking for. Plus, like I said, the proactive positioning that they had really put them and set them up for success. 22 minutes in, it looked like KT might start to be getting back into the game, taking their second dragging and getting 4 for 4 in kills, getting an even trade across the board, plus getting an objective. You would think it would even things up a little bit, but GenG, still being proactive, would maintain prio on the objective spawns. Peter would get caught out to give the Baron over, and a massive gold swing to Generation Gaming. And then a rinse and repeat from game number 1. We saw Cuz get caught in the same blind spot in the mid lane that would end up giving the soul over to GenG, puts KT in desperation mode, where they're just trying to find anything to get some gold back their way, to find some advantage to fight back into this game. But unfortunately, because of what happened very early on, this started from the beginning. It was a methodical breakdown from neutral objective control. The countdown had already started a long time ago, and GenG would go on to even the series. Now, there's no possible way. GenG is back in form. They've got themselves where they want to be, right? This is the GenG that we all expected. This is the world's favorite GenG. There's no way they let this slip now. They've beat KT Rolster how many times in 2025? We have a series on our hand, right? They've been here before. They know what to do. Well, game 3, they forgot what to do. BDD got his ear. I should just end the entire recap of game 3 right there. There should be nothing else that needs to be said. There was a very slow start to the game, so nothing got accelerated too quickly, too fast. But their first blood did come at the 12-minute mark from a Shurima Shuffle to kill off Chovy. And while we're watching the replay of the kill on Chovy, Chovy's dying again. So we go from live to kill Chovy, replay to kill Chovy, live to kill Chovy, replay to watch Chovy die twice. Like, it's just absurd what punishment BDD just gave him in a 90-second span, and really start to snowball that lead. It was very clearly, though, from that point on, the tilt Chovy game. We know Chovy's got some mental, I wouldn't say mental issues in the same normal context, but issues with maintaining a flat line of steadfastness in a series. They really wanted to tilt that one, and it was working. They dive him top. He does get a kill back at least, but now at this point, Chovy's got 3 deaths to his name, and it is starting to become a problem. Later on in the game, KT would pull a cat and mouse game, bouncing back and forth between the mid lane, rotating up towards Otacon as they're pushing a wave out, pressuring Otacon, pressuring mid tier 2, pressuring on back and forth a few times. And then eventually, Chovy following this, they start to realize that he's shadowing. They recognize the opportunity out of this one. Well, let's push out a wave. Pretend like we're going back up towards Otacon. Chovy's going to come out to catch it. We're going to stay in the fog of war for half a second. Boom. They hit Chovy with the ults, with the CCs. Chovy gets some of the wave, but then he also gives up his life for it. So that is exactly what KT really wanted. They won their cat and mouse game. They got that kill. And then they would move on up to take their objectives. And then probably my favorite interaction out of any point so far in any Worlds game is Cuz with his Poppy ult, as soon as we see the Starfall coming in from Pantheon, just ejecto Cuz, return to sender, send him right back where he came from to secure the soul for KT, moving themselves to match point, but there was no chance whatsoever that Canyon had. Didn't even get a stun off. Couldn't even throw a spear, put his shield up, nothing. Just one frame in, one frame gone. So full control from KT Rolster that they had, now putting themselves up 2-1, like I said, here, moving on to match point. And from that game, you can tell, from the playstyle, from the experience, and from the history, we know GenG's in their head, especially Chovy. This series is over. Now it's just on KT to not blow it. Game 4, the pick ban phase, KT Rolster walked in the locker room, just dropped the towel. Like, that's what happened in this draft phase. High risk, high reward. I'll give them that. If this doesn't pan out, they're done for. Starts out early again with some dragon fights. GenG getting the objectives, but KT is on the verge of getting the kills to wipe them out. They don't really lose a whole lot. They did lose that dragon, of course, but from that, there's still this mounting pressure that KT have the kill potential over the top of the rest of GenG. So at that point, GenG lucky to get what they got and then not lose anything further. GenG's neutral objective setup, again, in this game was pretty decent. They were getting to the neutral areas sooner, were putting themselves in a position where they could, but it just wasn't really panning out as they thought around Rift Herald that they might have an angle to get a pick, get advantage in that one early on. But then KT just shows up, kills 3, takes Herald, and then moves down to get the dragon. Like, it's just strictly business as usual. Pretty impressive showing so far from KT, only dropping a single game in this series, and now looking the way that they do here against GenG. There is an asterisk on it, because KT do make mistakes. They completely flub the engage around Otacon at the 21-minute mark, and somehow they still turn the entire thing around, kill off 2 members of GenG, and secure Otacon. So even when they mess up, they're not messing up that bad, because GenG's still messing up worse, and they're just that far behind at that point that KT Rolster's in full control of the series, even if they're making mistakes. There was a point, about 27-minute mark, where GenG think they would have a pick onto Cuz, but he would live long enough, healing up back into the Dragon Pit, and we watched Perfect kite around the terrain in the jungle to just kind of draw distraction. Look, everybody, shiny light over here. GenG follows the shiny light. Perfect flashes over the wall, survives. KT gets the objective, and then with cooldown advantage, because GenG would commit so much to try to get either one of those 2 kills on 2 of the tankiest members on the map, they commit so much to it that KT takes advantage, knowing the cooldowns, knowing that they have a tempo advantage at that juncture to move up to Baron, and they're going to take that objective as well. At that point, there's one last dance from GenG to try to stay alive, but there is just no hope. And unfortunately, the Church of Chovy is no longer in session, as the KT roller coaster is still going up and up and up.
KT Rolster 올라갑니다.
KT Rolster keeps going up, and that was BDD and the
to the World's Championship match. BDD going back once again, and a impressive showing that they had. A lot of doubters, like I said at the top of the video. They haven't played anybody. They're only 8-0. Once they watch and play GenG, it's done for. It's chalked. They're cooked. They can't beat them. Well, they can, and they did. So KT Rolster moves on into the World's Championship. Let me know if you're surprised at all. I mean, look, we already knew, we already had expectations. LCK was going to win Worlds this year. They only had one more opportunity for the LPL on the other side of the bracket. But the way the LCK has looked from all 4 of their seeds, this looks like the LCK's year. They're going to take it again. So let me know if you're surprised by this one. And we're surprised by the representatives of the LCK, because I don't think anybody really expected KT Rolster to be here. We would have figured from the bracket setup, GenG has a free and clear path, with KT being a somewhat of a challenge, but HLE significantly going to be a harder challenge for them. But it still was expected. GenG was going to make the World Finals. This was going to be their year. They were going to face off against an LPL juggernaut in anyone's legend, and it was going to be LCK's #1 and LPL's #1, and we're going to have this fantastic storyline. And now here we are. GenG's gone. We're left with KT Rolster. So I want to know down below if you think that KT is going to find their time to shine. This is the farthest they have ever been in the playoffs at any point ever in the history of the KT Rolster organization. So some people are pretty surprised to see them here. But of course, I want to know what your thoughts are. Do we believe? Are we fans? Can we say the word excited yet? I know some people on the broadcast are still a little tentative to do so. But until then, we're going to recap the other semifinal series in our next video. Make sure that you, of course, interact, like, subscribe, leave your comments down below. Let me know what you think about Worlds so far. What do you feel about Worlds 2026? We know the locations now. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.